All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something, well, it's kind of been dominating the headlines, tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs are always popping up, right?
Exactly. And with like all this talk about potential policy changes, and of course, Donald Trump's been pretty vocal about his ideas on trade.
Right. There's new proposals. It feels like everyone's throwing around the word tariff. But
But do we really get what they are, what they do, like beyond the surface level?
that's exactly what we're here for today. We're going to dive deep, like really understand how tariffs work. What are the arguments, the pros and cons, what could go wrong? I mean, we're talking trade wars, potential damage to the U.S. economy, the whole nine yards.
Okay, so big picture stuff. But before we go there, let's just, for anyone who might be a little fuzzy, what exactly is a tariff?
So a tariff, think of it as a tax, right? A tax that a government slaps on goods when they cross borders. Usually it's on imports. So basically when something comes into the U.S. from another country, boom, there's a tariff.
So, like, if I'm a company here in the US and I want to bring in, say, furniture made in, I don't know, Vietnam.
You got it. That furniture is going to cost you more because of the tariff. It's like an extra fee.
And who ends up paying that fee? Is it just the company importing this stuff?
Well, on the surface, yeah, it hits the importer first. Imagine a company here wants those cool Italian ceramic tiles, right? Each tile costs $1. But then, say, the U.S. government says, okay, 10% tariff on those tiles. Now, each tile costs $1.10. Seems small, right?
Huh.
But if that company ordered, say, 100,000 tiles, that little 10 cents per tile, it adds up fast. Suddenly, they're paying an extra $10,000.
Wow, yeah, that's not small at all. So where does that money go? Who gets that extra 10 grand?
Straight to the U.S. Treasury. It's collected by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They're the ones making sure those fees get paid. And get this, last year, we're talking $33.1 billion collected in import duties.
That's huge.
It is. But here's the thing. That's actually only about 1.4% of the total value of all the stuff we imported. So on average, our tariffs are pretty low compared to a lot of other countries.
Okay, so low tariffs overall. But you mentioned earlier that, some products can get hit harder than others.
Exactly. Like you buy clothes, shoes, those can have way higher tariffs, sometimes 10%, even 20%.
Yeah.
So while the average might seem low, certain industries and, us, the people buying those things, we can feel it a lot more.
Okay, so that's how it works, who pays and where the money goes. But why? Why have tariffs in the first place?
There are a couple of big reasons. The first one, it's pretty straightforward. Money. That $33.1 billion I mentioned, that goes into the U.S. Treasury, helps fund the government, all those programs and stuff.
Makes sense, but that's not the whole story, right?
Nope. The second reason, and this is usually the one that causes all the debate, is protection. It's about protecting American businesses from foreign competition. The idea is, if we make those imported goods more expensive with tariffs, then things made here in the U.S. become more attractive price-wise.
So back to our Italian tiles. If those get more expensive, I might think, hey, maybe I'll just buy American-made tiles instead.
Exactly. Encourage people to buy American, support local businesses, maybe even create jobs here. Sounds good in theory, right?
Right, but I'm guessing there's a but here. There's got to be downsides, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not that simple. Here's the catch. What if those American companies, the ones we're trying to protect, what if they rely on imported stuff to make their products?
Huh, like raw materials.
Yeah, like with our tiles, maybe the glazes they use or some of the raw materials, they come from overseas. If those get hit with tariffs too, well, the cost for those American tile makers goes up.
So instead of helping, it hurts them.
Exactly. It backfires. And there's another wrinkle. Those companies importing stuff, they don't have to keep buying from countries with those high tariffs.
So they could just go somewhere else.
Exactly. If widgets from Germany have a big tariff, maybe I'll just start getting them from, I don't know, Malaysia or Brazil. The point is, tariffs can shift where we buy stuff from, but it doesn't necessarily mean those jobs come back to the U.S.
It's like a global game of musical chairs.
Yeah, kind of. So we see how it works for importers and maybe some of the not so obvious effects on companies here. But what about us regular folks? How do tariffs hit the everyday American economy?
This is where it gets real for everyone listening, right?
Big time. See, those higher costs from tariffs, they don't just vanish. A lot of times, that extra cost gets passed down straight to us, the consumers. It's like a hidden tax, making everything we buy a little bit more expensive.
And we're not just talking luxury items, right?
Nope. We're talking groceries, clothes, everything. You go to the store, your dollar doesn't go as far. And we've actually seen companies come right out and say, hey, these tariffs are going to make us raise prices.
Like, I remember Kimberly-Clark, they make Huggies and Kleenex. They said tariffs were going to hurt their business and they'd probably have to raise prices.
Exactly. That's real-world impact. And that's just the start. There's this other thing, something economists call retaliation.
Oh, yeah, like, you hit
Yeah.
me, I hit you back.
Basically, when the U.S. puts tariffs on stuff, other countries often hit back with their own tariffs on our stuff. It's a tit for tat, a trade war. Like when we put tariffs on some Chinese goods, they put tariffs on our soybeans and cars, and the EU. They hit back with tariffs on things like bourbon when we went after their steel and aluminum.
So we try to protect one industry, but then another one gets hurt.
Right. Those retaliatory tariffs make our stuff more expensive over there, so our companies lose out, sales drop, and sometimes people lose their jobs.
Okay, so we've got higher prices, potential job losses. What else? What are the bigger, scarier economic consequences of all this?
Things can get messy.
Mhm.
Supply chains, they're already super complicated. They can get totally messed up, leading to shortages and delays. Prices, especially for things like food, could spike even more. And then there's the stock market. All this uncertainty makes investors nervous. Things get volatile.
And I know some financial analysts are already factoring this in, right? Like BMO Financial Group, they actually lowered their forecast for U.S. economic growth and said they expect higher inflation, and tariffs are part of the reason.
Yeah, it's serious stuff. And remember how we talked about tariffs on things like steel? How that can ripple out and affect other industries?
Right, even if it's meant to help American steel companies.
Exactly. See, if those companies can raise prices because of the tariffs, then everyone who uses steel, like car makers, construction companies, all their costs go up too. They become less competitive, and guess what? That can lead to job losses in those industries, maybe even more than any jobs gained in the steel industry.
It's like a domino effect.
Totally. And there's another worry, innovation. When we use tariffs to prop up older industries, it can suck resources away from newer, more innovative ones.
Right.
It's like we're stuck in the past instead of investing in the future.
So we're not just talking about short-term pain, but potentially hurting our long-term economic growth too.
Exactly. And if you look back in history, there's a really big, scary example of what can happen when everyone goes crazy with tariffs.
Yeah.
The Great Depression.
That's what, back in the 1930s?
Yeah. Everyone was trying to protect their own economies, so they slapped on huge tariffs. But it backfired. Trade basically ground to a halt. Everyone got poorer, and the Depression got even worse.
Not a happy story. So with all that in mind, let's talk about what's happening now. Donald Trump's been talking about some pretty big tariff plans, right?
Yeah, some pretty big ones. We're talking a 60% tariff on everything coming from China. That's huge compared to what we have now. And then there's talk of another tariff, maybe 10% or even 20% on imports from everyone else.
So basically, everything gets more expensive.
Pretty much. And there have been studies, independent ones, looking at what that could do to the U.S. economy. One said it could cost the average family about $1,700 per year because of higher prices.
Ouch.
Another one looked at jobs and said we could lose over 684,000 of them. And those numbers, they might not even be the whole story.
You mean it could be even worse?
Possibly. Those studies, they don't always factor in everything, like how domestic prices might go up too, or how other countries will retaliate.
So what's the argument for these tariffs? Why is Trump pushing for them?
It boils down to two things. First, money. They think they can bring in a ton of cash for the government, maybe even use it to fund tax cuts. And second, they want to put pressure on other countries, especially China, to change how they do business, basically make them pay us back for what they see as unfair trade deals.
Okay, so more money for the government makes sense, but would it be enough to really make a difference?
Well, they're saying it could bring in something like $250 billion a year. That's a lot, but in the grand scheme of the federal budget, it's only about 5%.
Yeah.
So could it fund some tax cuts? Maybe, but probably not huge ones without some other big changes.
And I know there are some industries that are really worried about these tariffs, like the car industry.
Yeah, they're freaking out. They're saying that 25% tariff on all cars and parts could add like $5,000 to $10,000 to the price of a new car. And that's for all cars, not just imports, because even cars made here use parts from all over the world.
Yikes. So new cars would be way out of reach for a lot of people.
Exactly. And it's not just us. Our trading partners, they're worried too. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, he said Canada might have to retaliate with their own tariffs if we go through with this.
So it could be a real mess for both of us.
Absolutely. And then you've got experts like Mark Zandi from Moody's Analytics. He's saying these tariffs will just lead to higher prices and fewer jobs. He even pointed to what happened during Trump's first term, when tariffs actually hurt manufacturing jobs and made things more expensive. And he made another really important point. When trade policy keeps changing, it makes businesses nervous.
Like, do we invest? Do we hire? What's going to happen next?
Right. That uncertainty is a huge problem. It can really hold back the economy. And all this brings us back to trade wars. We've seen it before. Tariffs lead to retaliation, things escalate, everyone loses.
Yeah, not a good look. And I know a lot of the talk about tariffs focuses on the trade deficit, especially with China. But can tariffs really fix that?
It's way more complicated than that. Sure, tariffs on Chinese goods might make people buy less stuff from China, but they might just buy the same stuff from somewhere else. And if China hits back with their own tariffs, it could hurt our exports, so we might not even make a dent in the trade deficit. It's like trying to swat a fly with a sledgehammer.
So, not the right tool for the job. And we've heard some people suggest using tariffs as a way to force other countries to do what we want on other issues, like immigration or the fentanyl problem.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. Economically speaking, it's not really how tariffs are supposed to work.
Hmm.
And it can backfire big time, making things even more complicated and potentially hurting our relationships with those countries.
So it's like we're trying to solve one problem and creating a bunch of new ones.
Pretty much. And this whole debate about tariffs, it often gets framed as economic nationalism versus, well, what some people call common sense trade policy,
So America first versus.
versus looking at the bigger picture, the global economy. The economic nationalist view says, protect our industries, protect our jobs. Tariffs are the way to do it. But economists tend to say, hold on, there are costs here for consumers, for other businesses, for the whole economy. Tariffs might seem like a simple solution, but they can have all these unintended consequences,